Arizona looks totally unimpressive against NAU. There were a couple good things to take away, but overall, this was a very dispiriting performance. What do we know and what do we need to know going forward here on Locked On Wildcats?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. This show is brought to you today by 5-Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Everybody uses 5-Hour Energy, and that's because it works. Check all kinds of stuff there with 5-Hour Energy. All right. Arizona beats NAU. This was not a good game. Arizona wins 22-10. I guess we will start with the offense because the offense looked terrible. First of all, before the game, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was held out. Who knows how long this is going to be, if this is a season-long thing, whatever the case may be. But the running game, I really have no issue with. I thought the running game was just fine. Quali Conley is an absolute monster. Aricino also looked really good as well. So there was that. The passing game, though, left a lot to be desired. Teteroa McMillan was bracketed as any smart person would do. And after that, nobody was really able to get open for the Wildcats. And again, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Now, I think Jeremiah Patterson is still going to be the dude. I have got a lot of faith in him, but offensively, the team did not look good. The offensive line did not look good either. And there was just a lot of things that you got to come away somewhat concerned by if you're the U of A. The first one, obviously, is the passing game. Now, Noah Fifita is the man. I have no doubt that Noah Fifita is going to be just fine big picture, but there were a couple things. First of all, you need to get Josh Baker back. I think you see at that center position everything that I think you see on that every position that, every time Josh Baker plays, things just flow more smoothly. There's just he's really a quarterback on the offensive line. You obviously need him. You're going to have him against Kansas State, obviously. And then you also have obviously having Big Rhino out was a problem. They've got to be able to, you got to get him back. The offensive line did not look great. But again, the running game was more than fine. I don't worry about that. As long as Quali Conley, Kedrick Reesano are there, I think you're going to be just fine. Rayshon Speedy Luke wasn't able to really get going, but, maybe there will be a time and a place for that. But overall, this was not a good performance by the U of A, and just something that I think you got to be really, really frustrated with from an offensive perspective, because Arizona should be able to do better than that. They should be able to put up points on. NAU. But again, I do not necessarily worry about the offense. I know I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I get it, but defensively, it was much better. Now, again, it was far from perfect, but you hold any team to 10 points, you should be able to say, all right, that was good, especially in this era of college football. The contain was much, much better. Obviously, Jacob Manu had a very big game, or had a very nice had some very nice plays for the U of A, but overall, it was just not a it was better. It was certainly a lot better than New Mexico, but let's also be honest here. NAU doesn't have the personnel that New Mexico did, and I think that does very much showed itself in this game. So you got to keep that in mind. Now, offensively, back to offense here for a second. It's going to be incumbent that somebody for Arizona gets that Jacob Cowing role. Now, again, we've been talking all camp that Jeremiah Patterson looked like he could be that guy. I am still not waving that white flag. I do believe he can be that guy, but you got to be able to show it, and you got to be able to show it sooner than later, because if you don't show it sooner than later, teams are just going to bracket T-Mac, and at that point, I think it's difficult. Noah's just got to kind of throw the ball up at that point, so we will see how that plays. Getting Josh Baker back, though, I think will be a very nice addition. You're also going to have to see with this tight end position too. You got to be able to get these guys even more involved. You got to be able to get Kean Burnett involved. We saw all camp the kind of player that Kean Burnett is, and he is he's got to be a real difference maker for the U of A. And if he's not a real difference maker, then that's another thing that you got to be able to figure out. So we will find those ones out. I do think as well that this is a team in Arizona that you watch them and you're kind of like, All right. Do we really judge everything based off these games? And I say I don't really believe so. But we're going to know a lot about this team going forward, and we're going to know a lot about this team going forward. Basically this Friday coming up here. You're going to know a lot and we're going to talk about that. But so far, there's no other way to put it. This was a wholly unimpressive performance by the U of A. And so far, this has not been an overwhelming introduction by Brent Brennan to this team, to this city. But again, that's not going to be where this is going to be judged. It's going to be judged based on Kansas State and then on Utah. Now, I think a lot of times we need to also just take a deep breath, though, and also know that this is a team that, you're putting a bunch of new pieces together. So you got to be able to keep that. You got to be able to keep that in mind. But it hasn't looked good. And honestly, it's, there's no reason that offense should have looked the way that it did against there's really no reason that offense should have looked the way it did against NAU. Again, it's not like NAU is great by any means. And I'm going to keep going back to it. I think Noah is going to be just fine. The running game, look at it, 29 carries, $118 on the ground. But when Quali Conley is your leading receiver, obviously Jeremiah Patterson got involved as well. So there are maybe some things that you could look at, but defensively though, there's a lot of good stuff to take away from it. Trey Smith had a sack. He had 2 tackles for loss. Traden Stukes, tackle for loss. Chase Kennedy, a sack. Isaiah Johnson in there as well. Jacob Manu doing Jacob Manu things. So again, it looked better, but this is the real bullets are about to start flying here, and we're going to see exactly how that plays out sooner than later. That's for sure. Now we're going to talk about moving on here in just a second, but first, 5 Hour Energy. Here's the deal with 5 Hour Energy. You might have watched that Arizona game and said, "Man, they look like poo." They needed maybe some 5 Hour Energy. It would not surprise me at all if that is what they needed. Check it out. Go to 5hourenergy.com and check it out. Use code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Go to, again, 5hourenergy.com. The great thing with 5 Hour Energy is it's a lot like LinkedIn in that it works. And not only does it work, you also know too that it's like 2 o'clock during the day and you're like, man, I just can't wait to get out of here. 5 Hour Energy says, let us help you in that regard. Check it out. 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com, another one of these ones, and use code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit about moving forward, because now here's where it's going, and here's where I'm at with this team, with Kansas State and with Utah. Obviously, you want to get wins, but I need Arizona to be competitive in these games. There's no reason that they shouldn't, especially against Kansas State. If you watch Kansas State against Tulane, they did not look very good. And one thing about Kansas State is that Avery Johnson is not a very good passer. Now, again, maybe he will become a good passer at some point, but right now that passing prowess is just not there. Arizona, I think, has a very real chance in this game. And keep in mind, if Arizona wins this game, then all of a sudden you're right back in it, feeling good about yourself. But this is a game that Arizona, even though you're going to Manhattan, Kansas, you got to be able to take advantage of. And if you can take advantage of, you're going to be able to win that game, obviously. A big part of this game, though, also is going to be what you see from the defense. Now, the defense looked a lot better against NAU. They were able to get after the quarterback, and honestly, they were able to kind of just flush everything out that NAU did. It looked much better. Again, Ty Pennington, certainly not Devin Dampier, but there's reasons to at least be enthused about the defense, and I think that we should all be enthused by what we saw. And like we talked about, and maybe this is just just being a homer. I mean, you could certainly say that, but you can also watch this game and also say too that this is a team that has more than enough talent to be good. It's about being able to play Simon football. And again, I got a lot of faith in Dwayne Aquina. I know people were questioning him after that New Mexico game, but I know people were. But I also don't necessarily worry about that. I don't worry about that one because I think he's a good enough coach. He's going to figure it out. Now, but offensively against K-State, you're going to have to score. because again, K-State's still going to put up points because they've got a real, they got a really good running game, and Avery Johnson is very, very dynamic on the field. He can run the ball. Not only can he run the ball, he can. You got to probably look out for a little bit of the play action just because he does have a big arm, but he's kind of a one-dimensional football player at this point, and I think that Arizona should be able to take advantage of that. And if Arizona can take advantage of that, I think you feel like you're in pretty good shape. Again, Arizona's going to be judged on this. If you go into Manhattan, Kansas, and you win that game or you're ultra competitive, I think we're looking at it, we're like, okay, cool. But if you go in there and you get absolutely annihilated, I think that's going to be a massive problem, obviously, for the U of A, because then you got Utah in 2 weeks, and that's going to be a difficult game as well. So those are two things that you obviously got to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to Utah, they clearly look like the class of the Big 12. Now, again, they didn't play well in the second half, but you watch them between Kyle Whittingham, between everything they do, it is a really, really good program, obviously, and you feel like they're kind of back doing what they're supposed to do. So again, Utah, got to keep an eye on them. But Arizona, you just got to look better. And again, I would expect Rhino to be out against K-State. Hopefully back for Utah. That will definitely make a big difference. But Arizona's going to be able to run the ball, I think, on pretty much anybody. The question is, are they going to be able to get receivers that are going to be able to get open enough to be able to make plays? And I think that's where, if you're Arizona, you're a little bit concerned. Is there going to be that? And if there isn't that, I think there's a much bigger issue in play. Now, talking about those two games and what Arizona can maybe learn and maybe a key to victory. But first, let's talk about Ibotta. All kinds of good stuff at Ibotta. Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta. By using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register, you can do that. Again, the cool thing about it is Ibotta, you can, again, it's a very, very easy way to shop. And again, Locked On College is looking to help you. So again, put on Locked On College when you register. Another one of these ones that it just looks at it and it makes a lot of sense. Check it out, Ibotta. Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 off for just trying it. It's that simple. Just try it. You get $5 off. Another one. Thank me later. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, listen, we're not going to sugarcoat it here. There was nothing about this Arizona game where you're like, okay, man, Arizona won by 12 against NAU. Good. Defensively, like I said, they looked a lot better. And we've been saying this from day one. The personnel is there. I think the problem, though, is with the person, again, NAU kind of stinks. I kind of wish that Arizona was able to get New Mexico again just so that you could see that. But offensively, somebody's got to emerge. And I'm telling you that somebody has got to be Jeremiah Patterson. Watching Patterson, you can still tell that he's got the quick twitch. He's got the ability to make plays. He's got the ability to, shift and make things happen. He's just got to be able to let it loose. He's got to be able to let it rip. And Noah's got to be able to have time to get him the ball, because T-Mac is going to be double covered the rest of the season. Everybody knows who T-Mac is. There's no Jacob Cowing. So somebody's got to emerge. And if the wide receiver doesn't emerge, it's got to be somebody at the tight end position then. We're going to keep going back to it. Kean Burnett, I think, needs to be that dude that can really take away things from other players or from the defense, because he can get vertical, he can go up and he can make plays. He's also physical as well. So we will find we're going to find that one out. But the real bullets start flying this Friday in Manhattan, Kansas. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Arizona goes out there and plays very well, because here's the thing. With fans, you always just look at your team and you're like, oh, that team looked, my team looked terrible. They're going to lose every game. But if you watch Kansas State so far, they haven't looked very good either. So that's going to be a game that Arizona, really, I think you really hope they can win, because then you got Utah coming up. Utah, you're going to have a couple weeks off. So hopefully Big Rhino is good to go as well. But, again, it's 2-0. You got the longest winning streak in the country. So there is that in play. You got to be able to keep an eye on that. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk about lessons learned from this game. And there is a lot of lessons learned. And I think we're going to find out if these lessons can be corrected or not. Because, again, you got to be able to take advantage of these teams when you're playing. And I think Arizona has the talent to do it, and that's why we should hold them to high expectations. But on that note, appreciate tuning into the post game and making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down and back the A, and we will be back with you tomorrow.